All right, here we go. Michael Franzese, welcome back.
Good to be back, Vlad.
How are you doing during the whole quarantine and so forth?
You know, I've been asked that many times, but I spent almost 3 years in the hole in prison. So this quarantine's been a walk in the park for me, but, not too bad.
I know, right? Compared to solitary confinement, this is great.
Piece of cake.
Well, you actually have some new businesses that are forming. So, for example, you have a pizza franchise called Slices.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. An ex-mafia guy starting a pizza restaurant. I mean, it's...
Well, listen, it goes back. I got one of my old relationships that I know for 35, 40 years, has been in the restaurant business forever. So he came to me about a year and a half ago and he says, Mike, I want to go back into pizza. And I said, Tony, come on, everybody and their brother has pizza. What are we going to do that's different? Long story short, he spent a year and a half researching, and we came up with a pizza that's delicious, amazing, and a concept that separates us from everybody else. So we're franchising. We've got 4 stores now, and we're continuing to go. And today, I live out in Newport Beach. We're getting word that there's going to be protests and riots here. So I got to go protect my store because it's going to be right in front of where my store is. So we may see some old school kind of things happening today, Vlad. We'll see. Hopefully not.
Okay, so what if a group of protesters, or looters in this case, approach your store with baseball bats?
Vlad, they're not going to take us easy, I'll tell you that. I mean, I'm old school in that regard. We protect our own. So hopefully that doesn't happen. We don't want any confrontations. And look, I respect the peaceful demonstrations, and I respect the protesters. No doubt they have a right, and I think we need change in this country. But when they take it, across that line and they start destroying businesses and going after people, that's when we put a stop to that.
Well, apparently in your old neighborhoods in Brooklyn, the old mafia guys aren't taking too kindly to all the looting and so forth.
No, and they shouldn't. I mean, I got word last night that a bunch of my old associates, friends of old associates from Staten Island, handled some business there last night. I mean, why should we accept this? I mean, these people have no right to come into our neighborhoods and destroy our businesses and go after our property. That's absolutely wrong.
Well, you grew up with a father who was not only in the mafia, but was always surveilled by the police, always followed, always harassed, and so forth. And I remember one of your interviews, you said that you grew up hating the police.
That's correct. I did.
Okay. And apart from them harassing your father, why did you hate the police so much?
Well, I saw my dad as my hero. I mean, he was my father, and I saw law enforcement as the enemy. And in many ways, because of the way they conducted themselves. I mean, I had a few skirmishes, and I want to be clear, this was FBI agents, and these were, detectives assigned to the organized crime division. It wasn't beat cops. We didn't get involved with beat cops, but these were detectives. And at times they just didn't conduct themselves properly. Man, I had many skirmishes with them, growing up, and I saw them as harassing my dad, harassing my family. So, that's the mentality that I had growing up.
Okay, what kind of skirmishes did you get into?
Well, I told this story often. I mean, I was 10 years old playing ball in the street, and a kid throws a ball over my head. We lived on an incline, so the ball rolls down to where 2 detectives were sitting in the car. Well, as the ball approached them, the guy in the driver's side gets out of the car, and he stops the ball with his foot. And he was a big guy, and he had a suit on. And when I got to him, I said, "Hey, officer, can I have my ball back?" And he looked at me, pulled his jacket aside. He had a gun in there, and he said, "This is for your old man one day." Kind of scary stuff when you're 10 years old. So, stuff like that. And then when I got a little older, when they would surveil my dad, once in a while they would surveil me, and I would take them on a wild goose chase and, go through, different areas of the neighborhood. And they would, one time they tried to arrest me for it, but they brought me home to my dad instead. So a lot of stuff like that. And then, I actually had my first encounter, real skirmish with them, I would say, when I was walking the line with the Italian American Civil Rights League and Joe Colombo. I actually got pretty well beat up by one of them, by a bunch of them, Billy's clubs and all. So, I mean, I had my fill of that, no doubt.